What is up, speedsters? Welcome to a brand new Flash video. Now, this is for the penultimate episode of Season 7 and the 150th episode, and also the proper introduction to Bart Allen, even though it was technically the last episode, but now it's pure speedster family stuff, pure all-out speedster war. And yeah, by the way, I'm sorry that I'm late with this. Just been a super busy week in terms of videos and other things, but at least it's here, and these are my thoughts, recap, breakdown, and review of The Flash's 150th episode and part 1 of the two-parter finale. And yeah, like, one thing I want to say right out the gate, this is a lot more enjoyable, and as I've kind of said in my last episode review, all while it still isn't absolutely perfect, of course, it's still the Flash that I wish would be this consistently enjoyable throughout the whole season. I don't want to still put this up on a pedestal, but like, at the end of the day, this is a lot more interesting. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of you will agree, because at the same time, I don't want to come across as if I'm raining on anyone's parade. Just because we're getting more entertaining Flash episodes doesn't mean that this is the most perfect thing. And yeah, I think that's just the truth. But at the same time, I do want to appreciate what we've got while we've got it. And I'm very intrigued as to see where this will go, and especially bleeding into Season 8. So let's pick up with the very beginning of this episode in Central City, 2049. Obviously, you can tell it's futuristic with, like, you know, I guess buildings, instead of having logos as in actual signs, they are holograms and whatnot. But the only thing I will say about this Godspeed, I feel like the voice is slightly different from the voice that we heard last episode when Barry was talking to that Godspeed in the pipeline. I liked that voice, but I feel like this Godspeed sounds like an angry Popeye. Do you know what I mean? It just, as I said, when I say this, I really do say it respectfully, because I don't want to come across as just as the Flash as what a lot of people are regarding right now as is getting good. Oh, of course, Boba's got to try and shit. No, I'm not trying to do that. I'm just being honest. Like, I wish the Godspeed wasn't so, it's just not what I would have picked. And as well as that, the kind of dialogue was a bit cheesy when he's like, infinite velocity will be mine, and once my ascension is complete, all will bow before the might of Godspeed. It's like, okay, I try and put myself in a position of sometimes these lines would be like that in a comic book, but I feel like sometimes they don't translate as well in live action, especially when compared to such a roaring and cheesy voice. But at the same time, which is a word I keep repeating in a minute, I was still really enjoying this. At this moment, Nora made Godspeed look like a baby throwing toys out of his pram, using Speed Force lightning, like the kind of tentacles from Psych, but it was kind of like a grapple, kind of infused with Speed Force or something. And also then Godspeed kind of just shot out of his freaking pistol fingers some Speed Force lightning. Now, as much as this may be face value cool, I'm actually not a huge fan of the Speed Force being kind of used willy-nilly like this. So I know Barry can project lightning out of his hands and whatnot, and I like that because it requires a charge. But when, I guess, Speed Force is being used, as even Nora said, like lightning grapple or something, and then Godspeed just goes bing, it's too overpowered almost. I think you do need to keep it back to, okay, a speedster can run, a speedster can discharge some energy like Barry does, but I don't like it in like a grapple hook instantaneously like that. I don't like it as a pistol coming out, because it's like, then sure, you can just be like pew 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 like all the time. At least that's what it kind of gives the impression across. But either way, as I said, don't want to shite upon anyone's parade. This was still an enjoyable intro, especially when Bart came in and phased through, and how that was poetically used again by Barry himself at the end of the episode. I really do really like Jordan Fisher as Bart Allen. That's one thing I can definitely say. The suit just does, and I've said this in my last review, but to all those people shitting on it online, I can understand where they're coming from with some promo images, but the suit looks good. I'm not a huge fan of this material they use for the silver, but overall, It looks so much better in the episode, and I will die on that hill. The only thing about Nora, and this is one thing, as much as I've said and I've said before, and I said in my last review, I enjoyed Jessica Parker Kennedy's Nora a lot more than what a lot of other fans do. I do wish that, I guess, that she wouldn't act so young. I feel like they did that initially in Season 5 because she was meant to be a mix of Bart and, like, Nora, if you know what I mean. But now that Bart's here, I just feel like, yeah, she is like a 26-year-old because she said she's going to be 30 in 4 years. I feel like sometimes the delivery from Jessica Parker Kennedy, and I'm not saying this is her acting at all, it's probably more like what she was given as a direction for the Nora character. It does come across, and I do agree sometimes, where it's a bit too eccentrically like, oh, Dad, like... No, like, you don't have to do that. You're the older sister, and I feel like that can be Bart Allen, that's fine, because he is the younger one, he's 19, but I feel like Jessica Parker Kennedy, sometimes her character of Nora is serious, and I really like that, and it completely suits Nora, but when it's like, oh, Dad, but come on, like, when it's that kind of thing, it's like, nah, it's a bit cheesy. I feel like they should have changed that direction for her character this season. I don't think that would have been too different from what we've seen before, because as I said, she does sometimes go into more of a mature... she doesn't have to be mature, but you know what I mean? Before, but it's just few and far between, and I wish it was like that all the time. But yet again, like when Godspeed was running on the treadmill, he was like, "You're too late now. The future belongs to Godspeed." It's like you could have been a lot cooler, like in the pipeline voice of last episode. This cut to Star Labs, where Bart and Nora talking about the fact that the Godspeed they chase through time apparently has no speed or memories now. They're kind of confused about the dozens of clones fighting each other. This is basically all news to them. They met Chester. They obviously know who Grammy Cecile is. And I find it, look, it's stuff like this that begins to irk me. It's absolutely hilarious when they say, West Allen family, rule number 1, protect the timeline at any cost and all costs. We can't stay. And then Barry's like, actually, you can. And I just laughed at it in that moment. Just because, like, I feel like, you know, I don't get why they weaponize lines like through Barry in certain situations. Like, we can't go to the future because if I do that in a certain problem, it will cause a flashpoint. But, like, it's fine when you run to the future in other seasons with Nora, as I pointed out in my last review, or if the kids come back, it's like, both of them here, they're already making massive Flashpoint-esque changes just through their very presence of being here, but apparently that just doesn't matter or something. They do give an excuse for as why they can't, like, go back right away, and that is when the Godspeeds are recharging themselves on the Speed Force, and as long as that's the case, you can't go back, but I did just think you could just run towards them and phase through them and then just carry on for the tunnel. Even if they chase you, at least you'll be going back to your time. So Chester built the schematics that his father had. That's a callback all the way to the end of the episode where his father had that thing. If you guys remember, you remember. But either way, it's very useful now because the plan is to neutralize Godspeed's artificial speed with it. I loved all, like, the Bart characteristics. Like, you can tell Jordan Fisher's just done his homework. He's I would say, quintessential Bart Allen here, because, you know, we saw scenes of him eating chicken super fast, he was burping and stuff. It was just great, and I'll praise him even more in a certain scene later. And we have this moment when it's just like Barry, I feel like he's being irresponsible with his own rules, I suppose, but this also offered a really cool line where he said, or you can just ignore the family rules for a minute and rewind that. And she's like, sure, how would I do that? Wait, are you on about the other Nora? Because obviously the other Nora could rewind time, and this Nora apparently can't. Now that doesn't rule out that she can't rewind time overall. Maybe she just hasn't figured out how to do that, but I did find it cool that in the future they're perfectly aware of this other Nora. She says, I mean, you and Mum told us a ton of stories about her, and I feel like a part of her is still alive in me, and I guess that was meant to kind of answer that thing, like who this Nora is, what kind of Nora is she in comparison to the Nora we knew before, and that was, yeah, basically telling the audience that she is not the same, but there's parts of her that's the same. And yeah, they all start to go out together. I was completely on board of this, looking forward to some Flash family stuff. The Godspeeds were punching each other. Barry told them to secure the area, and I noticed how Barry was a bit shook when he first heard Bart say, let them kill each other and clean up the mess. Now at this point, we didn't really know why Bart was saying something quite blunt, not really heroic kind of thing to say, but that's obviously because at this point we didn't know Godspeed was Bart Allen's thorn, so he was more than happy to say something like, let them kill each other, and Barry's like, my son just said that. This led up to a fairly predictable moment. We all kind of knew that Bart would be doing something that was kind of newbie Nora. Like, Nora came in, made mistakes, Bart's going to come in, make mistakes, especially as he's younger and impulsive, obviously. So it turns out in this moment, all the Godspeeds were chasing Bart when they split up, and they were repeating, kill the adversary, strike him down, kill the adversary. Yet again, I don't know, I wish they would have gone about the dialogue with Godspeed a lot more. I wish they just put a bit of thought into it, or even It is definitely the dialogue, not only the voice. I feel like they didn't nail it there. I know I keep repeating myself, but I would love to know your guys' thoughts on that. But it seems that just as they're about to try and kill him, they all just teleported. I guess lucky for Bart. But this is the moment where Barry kind of really wants to know why the Godspeeds were trying to go after Bart. Like, what is it that Nora and Bart aren't telling him? And initially, they don't want to because it goes against the #1 rule. Bart describes that Godspeed is his arch nemesis. He's my one big bad to rule them all, just like you and Thorn. And this kind of pulls a string of Barry's because he's like, Bart, Thorn devoted his entire life to destroying mine. He murdered your grandma. You can't just throw his name around without knowing what it means. And then Bart was like, I know what it means. I love that kind of speedster smash and the emotion coming out of Bart there. Obviously, we didn't have all the context in this moment, but it must have seemed like super patronizing almost of Barry. And this is the interesting dynamic I kind of love about this story and just stories like this in the Flash TV show, like with what we had with Nora. This is a younger Barry talking with a future version of his kid who he doesn't even know. So assumptions being made like this would really piss someone like Bart off when Barry doesn't have the full context. And, you know, obviously he did have something very much so taken from him, just like a Thorn kind of comparison. But yeah, it was just a really interesting scene, and I kind of appreciated the kind of creativity of that story behind it. Now, I found it, I don't know, I just found it absolutely hilarious, the Wally West comment in the Time Vault when he's like, Bekumi Amala confirms that Wally West is in deep meditation, handling unrest on the cyclic plane. Maybe they just should have left that out. I don't know. It was just weird. This is when Iris arrives, and did anyone else just find this scene weird? I don't know what it was. Maybe rewatch it again, but I feel like Candace Patton's delivery was like really, I don't know, it just felt like shady, like as if this was like forced. I don't know. I really can't articulate this. I just found it kind of off, and I'm still really like this. I'm guessing, and that's why I'm reserving judgment, that this is going to get explained in terms of like when they were talking about you needed healing in the Still Force, but I'm just like, but why? Why was she going to fracture throughout time? I'm guessing this has to be answered soon, but other than that, if it was just to have her out of 2 episodes because Candace Patton had those 2 episodes off and we're not going to get it proper explained as to why she was going to fracture throughout time, that would be really weird. And already, as I said, this scene felt weird when she just reappeared and, oh, like Dion found a way to... It just feels off. There's something off about it, and I'm wondering if they're even going to answer it. Anyway, moving swiftly on, this is when Barry and Iris decide that they're not going to let Bart go out in the field, because if it's true that Godspeed is a Thorn to Bart, well, Bart knows what Thorn has done to Barry, the pain that he's caused, so he must have done something to him. So they conclude that the Godspeeds aren't going to stop until they kill their son. But this is when it cuts to Jay Garrick. So I get, like, he's got, the answer there was he's got his speed back ever since the Speed Force was, you know, kind of reborn or something, and that's fair enough, it's good enough for me, and I guess he's on Earth Prime now, which, yeah, he is, so that makes me question, well, how is he on Earth 2 in Stargirl, but maybe they are just using a doppelganger of Jay Garrick, but the weird thing is he's using the exact same suit, so is Jay Garrick got to run to Earth 2? I really don't understand this, because at the end of the day, in the Arrowverse post-Crisis, unless they really messed up with that ending, saying that Stargirl is on Earth 2, then how does this Jay Garrick get there? We know he's in the exact same suit, the big lightning bolt, the jacket, so I don't know. But before he could run, he gets yeeted away from Godspeed, and he asks, what the hell do you want? And it's like, you, Jay Garrick, we want you. This is when it cuts to Bart, and he loses it when he sees his mum. I did find this line, maybe I'm reading too into it, but he says, it's all good, Dion already told us what happens when... Never mind. You could look at that one of 2 ways. Like, he's just explaining, oh, don't worry, Dion already told us, like, you know, when you were in the Still Force and stuff. But it seemed like there was more to it than that, because when he literally said, it's all good, Dion already told us what happens when. And he decided not to say when. Like, he could have just been like, when you're in the Still Force, you know, fracturing throughout time, you have to stay there and heal. He could have said that, but he decided to hold off. So when what? Maybe when you're pregnant with us, like, you start fracturing throughout time? Maybe that's what he meant to say, but he didn't want to say that you are pregnant with us right now. Some of you may be saying, but Iris isn't pregnant because Barry did the pregnancy test. Yeah, that was back then, but maybe she is right now. But no, I guess that wouldn't be the case because she's been sick for the past couple of weeks. So that's definitely a line to pay attention to. I don't really have any theories. It could pertain to the future Iris stuff, but even then, like, if I speculate about that, I'll just ramble for half an hour because who knows until we know. But yeah, what does it mean when he says Dion already told us what happens when... Never mind. Now, I knew it wasn't going to end well when they said that they didn't want Bart in the field and Nora didn't really have his back because he is impulsive and, you know, obviously that's a big he kind of felt betrayed in that moment, but it's also like true. It's part of his character. But I love how they tied this in, and I think it was my favorite scene of the episode that Nora and Bart had at Joe's house. I feel like his execution and delivery here, Bart Allen, Jordan Fisher here, was absolutely impeccable. It really was, and it really helped you tune into the character a lot more. It explains maybe why, you know, you can imagine Barry in the future is trying to educate him and help him with his speed, but maybe he gets frustrated with Bart's impulsiveness, whereas, for example, Jay said it was actually a good thing, and that he should utilize it. But anyway, we find out after Nora says, I get why you're angry after what Godspeed took from you from us. Godspeed, Nora. Godspeed didn't take Uncle Jay, he killed him. And that little tear that dropped out in that moment, mwah! Beautiful. So we learned that he killed Jay Garrick, Uncle Jay, who must have been very close to the family growing up, right in front of Bart. Like, that is personal. So obviously, like, it's both their uncles, but if it's just Bart here, and Jay there, and Godspeed there, and nobody else was there, that's very traumatic for just Bart to endure, especially maybe if he was closer to Uncle Jay Garrick than Nora was, especially, well, he was. Like, he's the one who didn't make him feel as alienated about his short kind of, not temper, but like his impulsive kind of attitude. Now up next, Caitlin and Cecile take August Hart without his memories to the cosmic treadmill to try and spark something, and something literally does spark because some white lightning came out of it when he touched it. So was that meant to low-key give him back his speed, but they didn't realize it there and then? If not, if he has no speed, then why did that spark even happen? I mean, I guess it's just one of those things we're not really meant to think too hard about, but I do wonder if there's more to it. Has he got his speed back now, even though he hasn't got his memories back, but he doesn't know he's got his speed back? I don't know. Maybe I'm looking too into that. But Barry charges Chester's tech. By the way, just wanted to say, I did skip the Allegra stuff. I did skip the Joe stuff. Same reasons as before. I just don't care. Now, this is when they launch the Chester tech, and it hits the Godspeeds, temporarily disables them, but it inadvertently supercharges them because it wasn't charged by Allegra, it was charged by Barry's kinetic energy, which actually, in turn, charged the Godspeeds to a supermax charge. And then, yeah, this is when the overparenting thing came in, because this is what I was kind of talking about earlier, and I was waiting to happen. So Bart was listening the whole time because he was phasing so fast. When they were discussing that Nora and Barry almost died out there, so if Barry couldn't protect her, then they're not putting them in that position. This is quite frustrating, but at the same time, the perspective of a parent, you know, is different. The only, you know, there's two sides. They're literally Central City's protectors in the future. Like, that's a fact. So I completely understood where they were coming from. Like, they run into danger every day. Like, what do you mean you can't have them out there? But then again, I suppose, you know, it's Barry being Barry. But yeah, I feel like it is a bit of a regression, considering after what happened in Season 5, he overcame some of that. But then again, I suppose when they come back and the fear of losing Nora before, like they did, it makes sense on both sides. So it's an interesting dynamic to explore, especially with two kids now. Also, I really like the Barry and Iris talk about Thorn and just like their legacy in general, because they discussed that they never thought that the kids would have to deal with a Thorn of their own. It's like a curse on their family. Tragedy follows them everywhere. Maybe that's the real legacy. But no, I'm just thinking, no, your legacy is generations of species to come. But regardless, this all started the night Thorn killed Barry's mother, and he says that he might not know where he is now, but their fight still isn't over. That's obviously just to kind of simmer along. By the way, guys, audience, don't forget that Thorn's out there floating around. The ribbon still needs to be kind of tied off. As I said, that should really be Season 8. I think that should be Season 8. It should be the final poetic Season 1, first season, final season, Reverse Flash again. But it's probably going to Season 9. But yeah, it's just like, don't forget, put a stamp that Reverse Flash is coming back, and I believe he is coming back at the end of this season, which may tee up the story for the future between them both, finally, you know, calling it a day between them both. And I wonder what that storyline really is going to be. But there was a line that I thought just really contradicted the whole, like, yet again, when it suits them, they're like, oh, we can't do this because it could create a flashpoint. But then when there's other dialogue at times, they're like, that doesn't remotely matter. So for example, when they say, if we beat Godspeed clones here in 2021, the real August Hart will never get their powers back, which means that when Nora and Bart go back to 2049, there won't be a Godspeed to endanger them. We have to break the chain. But I was just thinking, wouldn't that change alone be enough of a butterfly effect that would be massive? Like, this would rewrite the timeline in their future that they never A, came across Godspeed and fought the Godspeeds. Jay Garrick doesn't die, so there's a big flash. There's enough cause for another flashpoint. They're already saving a life, technically, in the future. Do you see where I'm going with this? Quite literally, they're trying to stop the Godspeeds in 2021. That, if that's successful, which I'm guessing it will be, that will cause a ripple effect, as I just said. Jay won't die. That's already, I don't have to carry on. That's enough to create a flashpoint. It doesn't matter, guys. It doesn't matter. But they will use the flashpoint excuse as to why they can't do something in a future episode again, because it suits the plot then, but it doesn't now. Do you see where I'm going with that? I really don't like stuff like this. Either way, though, Godspeed sends a transmission saying, Flash, turn over the adversary now, or else the one he loves will die, and that's Jay Garrick, of course. Bart, of course, acts very impulsive in this moment and rushes after Jay, knowing he's going into a trap. This was that kind of line I said earlier when Nora's like, you have to save him. I love Jessica Parker Kennedy, but this is the kind of issues I have with the Nora character. I don't mind what Bart's doing in this moment, because anyone emotionally driven by the trauma of losing someone in the future, I would do the same thing and run in there to not let Jay die even earlier, let alone let it happen again. Godspeed's boasting that his inability to suppress his rash nature will be his undoing, and we see Bart getting drained and screaming. Barry in this moment arrives. He starts doing the trick that his son did, running through the whammy thing. I do think, like, I can give this one a bit of a slide. Like, if he's running right in the draining, speed draining Godspeed whammy thing, why isn't he getting drained? Is it just because he's so fast that he can do it? Either way, I like how he did what his son did to disable Godspeed, but I just think it's a bit weird, like, oh, it drains speed sometimes, but then in other times, because of plot, it didn't drain Barry enough to stop him from getting to Godspeed. So yet again, it's just like, the rules matter anymore. But I found this moment pretty cool at the same time, because I love when all those Godspeeds appear. It's like this big Flash family moment. It's like they're all like, din, din, din. You know, like Jay's there, Nora's there, Barry's there, Bart's there. It's like, what are we gonna do? And that is when Cisco made such a cool entrance. Like, seriously, I was like, yes, Cisco, mecha vibe style. He says, I leave Central City for 2 seconds. Yes, I know, Cisco, this is why you should still be here. Puts all the Godspeeds in a stasis. And it does, honestly, it felt very good to have him back. It kind of feels like, oh, damn, like, this is really what we're missing now. And I literally called it in my trailer breakdown last week. I don't do them much anymore, but I decided to do it for this episode. I literally said, I can imagine Bart is going to end up in the med bay with Caitlin standing over him. What happens? Opens up with a scene with the camera panning out with Bart in the med bay. It was just so predictable. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we have the next step with Barry going into August Hart's mind. And I have to say, I do feel sorry for the August Hart before, you know, well, the one who doesn't have his memories. He says, I need to know who I am, even if it's someone I despise, which is going to be interesting if... A, we still don't have the answers as to why he doesn't have his memories. Was this all a part of the plan since the Godspeed within the Mindscape said, I expected you to get here sooner? So, one thing I like about this is, I do feel like the actor does have some charisma about him in terms of, like, this role he's got. I'm not sold on him fully, but I'm like, yeah, you know what, you're an interesting Godspeed. It's in that church, this is kind of in the future, so this is his, in that church in 2049, this is his, like, Star Labs, I suppose. There's a little throne there because he's got such an ego. He believes he's a god, so that's kind of like his Godspeed throne. I thought that was pretty cool. He says, you must have so many questions. Good thing I have all the answers. This is going to be so much fun. Now, as I mentioned in my last week's review and maybe trailer breakdown, that Eric Wallace did say, you know, Godspeed arc begins 7/15 or 16 to question mark. Now, I do want to say, if it was going to end the season, he would have just put 7 times 18. Like, well, 7 times 15 to 7 times 18. But he didn't. He put question marks. So this does infer that maybe this season will end on kind of a cliffhanger for once, instead of an actual resolution. And that would be pretty cool. I really wouldn't mind the Godspeed arc going on for quite a bit longer, because it's only been 4 episodes, and it's already starting to feel a little bit kind of fast-paced. And sometimes that's a good thing, but I feel like I can't imagine this ending next episode, and if it did, there's still some goodness, I think, to be squeezed out of this. So, yeah, I've got a feeling that things won't be resolved, and I feel like there's quite a bit of good chemistry with this new Godspeed, especially that final scene, as I said, to make still an intriguing story of it. Now, don't take me wrong there, like, I still find the Godspeed voice modulator very, as I said, like a weird-ass, drugged-up Popeye, if you know what I mean. But when that cowl was off, I really liked that, and it's going to be interesting to see how this affects things from here on out. So, overall, guys, as a part 1 to a 2-part finale, I found it decent in that way. I suppose as a 150th episode, some people may have expected more, and it was kind of underwhelming for some, but in my mind, interestingly enough, I didn't mind it. I thought it was kind of cool. Some of the issues I had, I've already mentioned, but, you know, I think I'm just happy to be in a place where I'm enjoying The Flash right now. I still, as I've articulated, it has issues and inconsistencies and contradictions, but I would be more than happy enough to keep reviewing this show and enjoying it and speculating and theorizing and nerding out about it with you guys if it maintains this status quo, you know? I think that's what it needs to do. It just has to. As much as I'm putting that out there, I want to kind of rein it in a bit because it's like, it's still not great. Ask yourself that question. Is it really as good as maybe what you're thinking it is? Just because it's better than the Mirror Mistress Monarch stuff and the other stuff we've had to deal with, like the Forces storyline? I would say it's decent. That's where I'll leave it at. It's not great. It's good. It's not good. It's decent for me, and that's where I want to leave it for me, and we'll see what this is like in the second part to the two-part finale. But yeah, go ahead and like this video, guys, if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you want to stay up to date with more Flash stuff and thoughts and breakdowns on this channel. Check out the top pinned comment in the comment section down below. Click the show more button as well so you can see all of the links to my Twitter and other social media. But yeah, I think that's everything, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you speedsters in the next week's review. Goodbye.